So I hope you had a chance to play with the Atom Editor a little bit. If not, no worries. We're going to be doing lots and lots with it over the next little while. So where I left off with last time was right here on my in my Atom Editor, and I had file2 and index.html, and they're still open. And in my web browser, I'm looking right now at the index.html file, and it has nothing but a title and a blank screen. Let's go put something on that blank screen and have a look at some of the HTML tags you need to become familiar with. So I'm going to close file2 for the moment, open index.html, and I'm going to change the contents of the body tag. This is the structure of an HTML document. It has the very first line, doctype.html. That tells web browsers, when they load the file, what kind of document it is. As you may or may not know, web browsers can open HTML files, or images, or videos, or all kinds of things. Even some obscure formats you may never have heard of, like XML or JSON. But this tells the browser that it is a doc type of HTML. And if you do a little bit of searching online, you're going to find all kinds of variations of this opening tag. And you could ignore all of them except for the one that I'm using right here. And the reason you could ignore them is because this tells the web browser to load the file as an HTML5 document. And that's what we want. So we have it as an HTML5 document. Then the next tag opens the HTML document itself. And you'll notice at the very bottom of this file, on line 10, it has a closing tag called HTML. Most HTML tags have both an opening and a closing tag. There are a few exceptions, and we're going to see one in just a moment, but most of them open and close. And I'll show you why that's important in just a few moments. After the HTML tag, we have this section that has an opening and closing head. Now, the head part of a document, very little of it is ever visible to the end user. The one thing that will always show up is what's in the contents of the title tag. And as we saw last time, what's in here changes what's visible up here in our web browser. So if I change that title tag to something else, save it, go back to the web browser, reload that page, we'll see the new title up here. We already know how to do that. So then the head tag closes, and then we have the body tag. And what's between the opening and closing body tag in an HTML document is what you, as an end user, will see when you visit that page. So for example, if I come in here and I type hello, world, and then save this document, switch back to my web browser and reload the page, I'll see hello world. Well, that's not terribly exciting, it's just kind of some text. Well, what happens if I go back to my Atom Editor, hit return twice, and then type goodbye, cruel world, and save it? Well, what I'm expecting to see when I go back to the web browser is one line of text, hello world, and then below it, another line of text that says goodbye, cruel world. Let's see if that's what happens. I go back to the web browser, I reload this, and that's not what happened at all. And that's one of the things you really need to understand about HTML, is it makes some decisions about how it formats things based upon its best guess. And right now, I have no indicator anywhere in this little bit of text in between the body tags that tells the web browser how to treat this text. So it just lumps it all together. Another example, if I put a bunch of blank spaces between goodbye and cruel world and save it, and then go back to my web browser and reload the page, I'm not going to see any of those spaces. One of the things that HTML does is whenever it finds words with no particular formatting, it just collapses them together and puts one space between everything. Now we can fix that. First of all, let's get rid of these spaces and return it back to just one space. What I'm going to do next is turn these two things into paragraphs. And I do that by using an HTML tag. The opening tag is P, which says start a paragraph, and then wherever I want that paragraph to end, I put a /p in pointy brackets and save it. Let's do the same thing to the second line. P/P. And now when I save this, and remember to save it, go back to your web browser and reload that page, I should see two paragraphs of text. And I do. That's exactly what I want. Still not very exciting though. I mean, putting paragraph after paragraph isn't that exciting. What else can we do? Well, we can give things headings. So I'm going to click just after the body tag to put a blank line before this paragraph tag, and I'm going to put in a heading. And the heading uses one of a number of possible opening tags. H1 is the one I'm going to use right now. And that says this is a heading of level 1. So I'll call this heading 1 and close my H1 tag. And then just to make things a little more attractive, I'll put a blank line in. Save this, switch back to my web browser, reload the page, and I have a heading 1. What if I wanted to put a heading after this paragraph and before goodbye cruel world? Well, switch back to your web browser and let's put a heading tag here. But this time let's use H2. And we'll put in heading 2. H2 is my closing tag. And save that. Go back, reload the page. You'll notice it puts a second heading in, but it's a little bit smaller. And it probably doesn't come as much of a surprise that I can actually put a number of headings in here. H3, heading 3, H3, H4, heading 4, H4, and save those. And when I go back and reload the page again, we'll have all of those headings, and they get progressively smaller. Now, it's rare that you're going to get beyond heading 4. I almost never get beyond heading 3, but you're going to be using these a lot. And you might be saying to yourself, okay, but this is really not that attractive. It's really not anything that I would ever want to use for a real live website. Don't worry about that. All we're worried about right now is learning the basics of HTML syntax and learning some tags that are going to be critical to us as time goes on. We'll add styling in the coming lectures when we learn about cascading style sheets, and when we get to Bootstrap, you'll see how you can make a really professional looking website. But right now, let's worry about the syntax. Let's go back here and get rid of these headings and just leave heading 1 and heading 2. And just to make the paragraph a bit longer here, I'm going to copy Goodbye Cruel World and paste it a whole lot of times, just to make a longer paragraph. Save that, go back to my web browser, reload it, and there I have a longer paragraph. Okay, now let's say I have this long paragraph of text, and underneath it I want to have a list of items. Maybe I want to list my favorite foods. So I put in a heading, H2, my favorite foods, H2, and then I want a list. Now I could, if I wanted to, go P, apples, /P, and then another one, oranges. I could do all of that, but that's really awkward because that's going to put just paragraph after paragraph after paragraph. Now, there's another series of HTML tags called lists, and they come in 2 varieties. Actually, they come in more than 2, but 2 for now. We're going to first of all have a bulleted list, just a list of items that has a bullet in front of each one. That's referred to in HTML as an unordered list, and it begins with the tag UL for unordered list. And I'm going to type my closing UL tag right now, just so I don't forget to. And that's a good habit to get into. For every item on this list, I have what's called a list item. And the tag for that is, not surprisingly, LI for list item. So now I'll type apples and a closing LI, because that's one item all over and done with. LI, oranges, /LI, LI, peaches, LI, and LI. Let's go with, I don't know, apricots. I've never actually eaten an apricot, but I understand they're not too bad. So I save that. Now, what am I going to see when I go back there? First thing to note is that I have to have an opening UL tag, and it must have a closing UL tag. Similarly, for each of the items on the list, it's critical that you have both an opening and a closing tag, okay? And you're never, ever going to do something like this. Put a P tag around an LI tag inside a UL tag. That's just bad form, and I don't even know what that would do, but you're never ever going to want to do that. Keep your tags clear and organized. And one of the things that will help you do that is formatting your HTML as you type it. And pretty soon now, I'm going to show you a way that Adam can actually format our HTML for us, and we'll turn that feature on. But right now, it's always good to get in a habit of keeping things as clean as you possibly can. And remember the blank space that I put in here between these? That's ignored by the web browser, so use as much blank space as is necessary for you to keep your HTML readable. So let's save that. Go back to our web browser, and now we reload the page, and we'll see what an unordered list looks like. And it does exactly what I want. It gave me my heading, which I typed in, and then it gives me 4 items in a nicely formatted list. But if I go back now and change that UL tag that opens to an OL tag, and then I change the closing UL tag to a closing OL tag, that changes it from an unordered list to an ordered list. Let's see what that does. So I come back, reload the page, and notice how those bullets have changed into numbers. And the web browser nicely numbers those things for us, so we don't have to worry about it. If I come back here and say, oh, I forgot to put bananas in, and that's my second favorite, I put an li tag, banana, closing li tag, save it. When I go back to the web browser and reload it, it automatically renumbers things for me. So far we have headings, H1 through H whatever, paragraphs, heading, we have an ordered list and an unordered list. But what if, in this really long paragraph I made a while ago, I actually want to put a line break in there? I could, if I wanted to put a line break right here, I could close this paragraph and then open another paragraph tag, so it has a closing paragraph tag way over here on the end. And that will work. If I go back and save this, go back to my web browser and reload, that will do exactly what I wanted, but it put kind of a blank space in between these, and that's not what I want. For some reason, I want to have this line end right here, and then immediately on the next line, I want to have some more text. Well, there's a way of doing that, of course. So let me delete those two p tags I just put in there. Press return once, and I'm going to type a tag that does not require a closing tag. It's just BR, which stands for line break. Now if I save that, go back to my web browser, and reload the page, watch what happens. It actually does not put a blank line in between. It just puts a line break with no space between the paragraph. Because this is, as far as this HTML is concerned, this is all one paragraph, starting here and ending way over here with the closing p tag. And that break is contained in that paragraph. So now we have a new tag, the BR tag. The one thing that seems to be missing right now for our brief introduction to HTML is, how do I link between pages? Because that's the heart and soul of hypertext, being able to link between pages or link to different assets. Well, we already have a page 2. We called it file2.html. And we have page 1, our index.html. Let's go to the very bottom of this, create a new paragraph, and say page 2. Well, that's not a link yet, but let's see what it's going to look like. When I come back to my web browser and reload, I want this to become a link to page 2. Let's see how we do that. So I'm back in my Atom editor. I'm down at the paragraph that I want to make a link. And here's another HTML tag for you. It's called the ahref tag. And it stands for A is action, href is hyperreference or hyperlink, followed by an equal sign, and then in quotation marks wherever you want to go. And I want to go to the file named file2.html. So I put in file2.html. Close that tag. Now I have an opening tag, ahref. I need to have a closing tag. You might be tempted to put that right here, /a, and that's bad. I can save that, and it'll probably work, but it's actually bad HTML, and I'll tell you why in a second. Let's go back to our web browser to reload this, and yes, that appears to have done exactly what I want. When I point at it, if you happen to have your location bar turned on or status bar turned on the bottom of your screen, you can see it's going to go to the right file. But what we have here are overlapping tags. So let me put a few returns in so you can see it a little more clearly. What I have here is an opening p tag, then an opening ahref tag, and then a closing paragraph tag, and then a closing ahref tag. These two, let me highlight them so you can see them, these two are in the wrong order. You never want to have overlapping tags. So let's fix that by getting rid of the closing p tag, and then putting it where it belongs. And then I'll format it so you can see the structure the way it should be. Okay, so let's press returns, because as you know, the returns are ignored by the web browser. And now you can see that this p tag matches this p tag, and this ahref tag matches this closing a tag. And actually, there's a neat feature you can turn on in Atom that will make things a little more apparent for you. So I'm going to show you how to turn that on, and I recommend that you leave it on. Open your Atom preferences, and then scroll to the very bottom of the settings. So at the very bottom, you're going to find something called Show Indent Guide. And I'm going to check that, and then I'm going to close this settings window. And you notice that Atom now draws little lines between the opening and closing tags for us. And this makes it much easier to see what's going on. So we've now cleaned up our tag. Let's save this, go back to our web browser, reload the page, and see if this link works. So I click on page 2, and it takes me to an empty page. Well, what is in page 2? Let's go back to our Atom editor and find out. And page 2 is absolutely empty except for the title. So let's give it a heading. In the body tag, I'm going to put a heading. This is page 2. Close my heading tag. And then I'll give it a paragraph of text. This is the second page. And close that. And just for fun, let's put a link back to the home page. href equals, and what's the name of the page I want to go to? It's index.html, index.html, back to page 1, close that tag, and close my paragraph tag. And there it is. So that, when I go back to my web browser and reload this page, which is page 2, should give me a heading and should give me a paragraph of text consisting of a link that takes me back to the home page. Let's see if that happens. There's my heading, there's my text, and here's my link. And now I can go back and forth between these pages. Okay, that's good. But what if I want to go to somebody else's page on a different site? Well, here on page 2, let's put a link to Google. On page 2, in this paragraph of text, I'm going to put a period after this, so it actually ends a sentence. And then I'll make a new link, href equals, and I want to go to Google. Now, how am I going to get there? Because I don't have a file called Google over here, and of course we don't need one. We just type the full web address to the page we want to go to. And the full web address is http://www.google.com. And then I put the text that I want to be blue and underlined, and I'll call it go to Google, close my A tag, and that should be all that I need because I already have a closing paragraph tag here. So let's save that, go back to our web browser, reload page 2, and now I have a go to Google link. And when I click on that, it does exactly what I want to. It takes me to Google. Okay, so I'll click the back button. That's enough for right now. Let's take a little bit of a break, and then we'll move on to how to properly format your HTML. Because keeping a clean document is really, really important.